Well, this approach was to talk to academia because the scientists are really in-depth in exploring, for example, audiences, results which we are much interested in. They're exploring the effects of new media, of multimedia in our converging media world. So this was a first step to talk to them because sometimes, as you may know, universities are a little bit in their own circles, and of course media personnel are on a different moon. So this was the first step to come more into talks.
Are we talking here about all media, or was the concentration really on public service media? Because in the current sort of global technology era, pretty well everybody thinks they're a journalist if they've got a mobile phone with a camera on it, don't they?
Well, of course, citizen reporters, you mean, like this. But because the EBU Knowledge Exchange was organized by EBU, and EBU was representing public service media, it was, of course, the main content about public service media. And as public service media, we face, of course, the challenge of the Internet, of all these, let's say in radio, for example, you have up to 10,000 different Internet radio channels. And what are the public broadcast radio, the public radio, what are they doing with this? How do they react? Do they, for example, get in partnerships with Spotify? How do they react and come together with YouTube, or should they ignore them? So these are all strategies which are discussed there and which are discussed within the public service media community.
And what was decided about this exchange of knowledge? I'd suggest that any public service media organisation that ignores the new technology won't be around for very long, will it?
Well, it's not about ignoring, but of course you can't ignore it. But for example, take Sweden. Spotify in Sweden is very strong. So Swedish radio, which is very well known in the market there, decided to do their own channel on Spotify in order to reach their audience there, but branded with Swedish radio. Or another example, publishers, as you know, newspapers are going down these days. And again, Sweden, so they realized to offer their Swedish radio audio player as an embedded player to newspaper websites, and this is a big success for Swedish radio, and it's a win-win situation for both. So these are strategies how to react, or take Czech radio, for example. They have a partnership, an exclusive partnership with YouTube. They run their channel there on YouTube because Czech radio doesn't have the money to put up their own IT video structure, so they upload their videos to YouTube, and they know that their audience is already on YouTube. So this is a win-win situation for them there. But somehow it's critical because they're going to lose their rights when they offer videos there. So this is a very two-sided situation, and this were some subjects discussed in Barcelona.
And the feeling overall from, I suppose it depends a little bit, you've mentioned Czech and Swedish radio. A lot, I suppose, depends on who the audience is in these different countries.
Well, radio is overall in a better situation than TV. So radio almost reaches, public service radio reaches an average of 50% of the market. Sometimes more, sometimes a little bit less. And radio normally has a lot of different radio stations. So our average member runs around 5, 6, 7 radio stations, so they can address more easily different audiences, younger audience, middle-aged, elderly, cultural interested, and so on. TV is more expensive, has less channels, so TV is in a bigger problem to address their audience. So radio is, I would say, on a safe place.
And the future, were there any suggestions coming out from all these different panel discussions? I mean, one of the discussions, I think, was innovative radio. How do apps, online platforms and hybrid services attract the audience? What came out of that?
Well, we had, for example, one CEO of a private software company who is very much engaged in online radio services, and he was very much into telling the audience in Barcelona, well, see, iTunes Radio started just now in September, and this will change the whole world. But the audience, so public service radio editors, were very critical about this, because they're trying to do both. Of course, they continue their radio business in FM, and if it's available in digital radio, terrestrial digital radio, DAB, for example. And of course, they come up with new radio apps. For example, Radio France showed us a new, more easy-to-handle radio app for their radio channels, and to get more content to the people on every platform. So the strategy is make good content, stick to your really good, high-quality content, and try to reach the people on as many platforms as possible.
And which, I suppose, gives you, therefore, the variety of possible audiences, because undoubtedly it is the younger audience at the moment that seem to grab every app that's out there. Does this mean, if we're not careful, that older members of society, and let's be honest, the number of ageing people in our societies is growing and will continue to do so, are they in danger of getting left behind?
No, I don't think so. Because if you just watch the figures, the sales figures of smartphones and tablets, and not only young people are buying these devices, but also elderly people, and this is the growing market there as well. So what EBU is trying now very hard is to promote, and we are in really good talks with big mobile device manufacturers, to convince them to insert in their mobile devices broadcast chips, so that you will be, hopefully in the future, enabled to listen to radio with no extra costs on your mobile, on your smartphone, on your tablet. And this will change the future, because we think that these mobile devices are, of course, a sort of the medium of the future.
Well, they're one that you've always got in your pocket. I mean, I don't know if you're old enough to remember the old days when people, if they wanted to listen to music on the move, had to go and buy one of those little transistor radios with an earphone, and that sort of was the first time people could take radio out of the home, wasn't it?
That's right, but now the smartphones do offer, some of them do offer it. There are some smartphones on the market which have FM chips in it, and you can listen to radio on the move without additional cost. That's the crucial thing, because most of the smartphones, of course, do have any apps on it, and you can listen to radio via IP, but this costs you outside a cost-free Wi-Fi. So you have to pay for your network, for your mobile data package.
And you interestingly mentioned earlier that, I mean, actually, because most radio stations these days are online, I mean, if you're at home on your computer, or if you've got some of the apps on your phone, you can listen to any radio station pretty well anywhere in the world, can't you?
That's right.
Has that changed the way we think about broadcasting, and has it changed broadcasters' way of thinking?
Well, I think it changed a bit. They're trying now really to concentrate on the quality of their content, because I think in the end content is king. And if you're still able to offer really good high quality content, if you have the one good presenter which is really close to your audience, you will win. And this is, in the future, of course, the big quality of public service broadcasters. And
we have to talk now about the public service media, because I think, again, one of the keynote speeches was about the indispensability of public service media. Why is it indispensable? Why can't you just leave it to all the private stations?
Well, because basically private commercial broadcasters do their business because they want to make money. And, for example, good journalism is very expensive, so they don't invest in good journalism, and they normally don't invest in investigative journalism. And we think that public service broadcasters have a clear mission, because they are a pillar of democracy. So if you don't have an independent public broadcaster, you get a problem in your country or in your society. And are you sort of feeling upbeat about the future of public broadcasting? You said TV has quite a lot maybe to do because there are fewer options for it. Long time ago, people said, oh, radio's dead, TV's arrived. Personally, I think radio has many more opportunities to keep up with the times and expand its audience than TV does. Well, I think radio has still a bright future, and we see the daily average of listening to radio is, for example, in Germany, in France, in the UK, is about 3 hours a day, which is a very high number of minutes, and it's not decreasing, and radio has a more big variety, and you can listen to radio when you're doing anything. You're driving your car, you are under your shower, you're having breakfast or something else. So radio has still a big part in daily life of people, and we have a lot of very well-branded radio stations, very good programs, and so of course they will try new things, and they will try to buy media, try to use the internet, try to reach their listeners, their audiences with additional content, maybe with content on a non-linear way. So if you just listen to live radio and say, hey, that's a good music, what was it? Can I check it again? So these are the benefits, of course, of the internet. And as we see, again, in Nordic countries, they came up with new audience networks. So they're really getting a very close relationship to their audience which subscribes to the regional public radio stations, and they get a lot of input from their audience on this way.
And that's very important, isn't it, to connect as closely as you possibly can with your audience?
That's it, yeah, that's very important, sure, yeah. So I see a bright future for radio. And of course TV, there's much more money involved, there are much more rights problems to solve sometimes, and you don't have that many TV options as a public broadcaster, so TV is more under pressure maybe than radio, but TV is also, of course, strong.
Can I just ask you before we finish, Christian, about this EU chip that we've heard about, because that will change the whole way radio operates across the European bloc, won't it?
Well, we call it the Euro chip, and it's a marketing slogan, so EBU is not producing chips, but the idea is to have analog and digital broadcast on one chip in all devices in order to enable the transition from analog into a digital world for radio. So we have more than, 200, 300 million FM devices on the market in Europe, or more than that. And, of course, not enough digital devices, but there are a lot of benefits for digital terrestrial radio. So this dual chip would encourage that people could listen to analog and to digital on the same time, whatever is available. So this is the idea, and this chip should be inserted in all mobile devices, because, as I mentioned earlier, mobile devices seem to be very much the future listening devices, and of course watching devices for videos as well.